There you go. My work here is done. Oh God. It seems even with my powers, nothing can stop the beaver face trend that's taken over BMW. And it's never more provocative than in this particular car, and this is the new G22 4 Series Coupe. BMW say that they created the 4 Series to be distinct in its looks on purpose in order to bring it up a level and provide more luxury and more quality. Now that could be true, though that all sounds like some really well-designed excuses to cover up what is basically a polarizing design decision. Now only hindsight is truly going to tell us who was right in the end. All we can do is check out this new M440i xDrive, which is the first M-powered version of the new 4 Series, and see, are the looks going to be a deal breaker, or is there enough charm in this car to achieve its goal of more exclusivity and be a truly exciting M car? Let's find out right now. So guys, let's rewind time and go back to 2019, Frankfurt, back when motor shows were still a thing in the world, and BMW showed off this, the Concept 4. And the entire automotive world in unison gasped. But I think we were somewhat grateful at the time, thinking, let's give our feedback, let's tell them that we absolutely hate it and don't do it, and then it won't happen, right? Well, it happened. And there it is. Now, the head of exterior design at BMW is Christopher Wheel, and he has said that BMW rightly has a very long history of vertical grills. And in fact, we explored a lot of this in our M4 video. And though he's right about that, and it's undeniable, the application of said vertical grille is very important. So on those cars, either they were a lot smaller, or perhaps better proportioned, or didn't have to deal with a gigantic number plate going across the middle of them. Now, for example, if we compare it to the previous 4 Series Coupe, even in its final form of the M4 CS, that looks quite tame and not quite as aggressive as this, which is quite amazing. And yet this is the shadow and blacked out version of the grille that comes as standard on the M440i. If you look at the other option that's available, which is the chrome one, it's kind of even more in your face. Now the weird thing is that I actually really like the M4's version. I know that seems like a contradiction, but it's genuinely not, because in the M4, the slats that you have are more traditional and more classic in my opinion, and not just that. What offends me more on this car than the actual grille itself and the kind of arty-farty application on the front is what goes on the side intakes. I think that these are horrible. Whereas the grille I could probably deal with, I just don't like the sides at all. And when you look at the M4, I think it's designed fantastically well on the sides in a way that it really goes well with both the headlights, which are lovely, and with the grille and the bigger BMW logo on the front. Whereas this, in my opinion, just doesn't. As far as the rest of the design goes, I think it's really beautiful, and it really reminds me of the 8 Series, which I think is one of BMW's best looking coupes ever, in all the best ways, don't you think, if we put them both here? I think it looks really nice. And another good thing, in my opinion anyway, is that it's kind of separated itself in looks from the 3 Series, and it does look like a more upmarket coupe. If we compare it, for example, to the C43, which is a direct rival of this car, the C43 looks so boring, doesn't it? Very dated and last generation, whereas this truly looks like it could be on the same level as the 8 Series, which is really what BMW wanted to achieve. I'm really quite a fan of the rear lights as well, the entire rear end, very nice looking. I like the trapezoidal look of the exhaust as well. It's different to what the rivals do. Really quite handsome from the rear, this car. In dimensions too, it's changed versus both the previous car and the brand new 3 Series. So we're 13 centimeters longer. We've got 3 centimeters width increase as well, and it's ever so slightly taller. So again, sadly, another car that has grown in proportions, as all new cars do. Now, the rear track is actually wider than the 3 Series as well, and in fact, the center of gravity is 21 millimeters lower, which has helped deal with some of that extra size of this car. Indeed, we can attribute some of that to the Clar platform, which it sits on, which is the new platform. It's got a lot more use of aluminium, like on the bonnet, the wings, the doors, and in the suspension itself, all helping with this. What I find more interesting was the stiffening done in this to make it more rigid versus the normal 3 Series. For example, we've got the use of a shear panel on the front end to help with that. We've got a strut that goes across the front 2 suspension towers, and we've got an A-frame on the front engine bay as well. Again, all to help with this idea of rigidity. The suspension retains the same application as in the 3 Series, so aluminium based, as I said, McPherson strut 5-link suspension on the rear as well, and it's got an exaggerated camber on the 4 Series versus 3 Series as well. Now, as far as our M440i goes, it's of course an X-Drive fully variable all-wheel drive system. So of course this has got the M Sport suspension with adaptive dampeners to make this more comfortable or more dynamic depending on your driving style. Then we've got the electronically controlled rear locking differential. You've got the usual speed sensitive steering that of course we'll go into later. And we've got bigger 4-pot brakes that are either available in red or blue. The engine is the brilliant B58 inline 6 turbocharged engine that I love so much. The power delivery is beautiful on this. 374 brake horsepower and a 0 to 60 of a commendable 4.5 seconds and decent torque figure of 500 Newton meters. That's all linked to the 8-speed. So exactly the same as the 340i then? Well, not quite, because this also has an electric starter generator that will give a bit of hybrid power. So we're talking another 11 brake horsepower, kind of the trend happening with all performance cars these days, as we've seen in, for example, the 53 AMGs. One thing I find weird is where the 340i is kind of your normal faced alternative to the more aggressive looking M3 or the controversial M3. This one is even more controversial in my opinion than the M4, so you're not awarded the same kindness by BMW in this particular car. So guys, what's your thoughts on the overall look of this car? I'm fascinated to know. No excuses on if it was all black it would look great, because hey, it's already all black here. So yeah, I want to hear what you think. I think it's much further along towards 8 Series as they intended, despite what I think of the looks. I think it looks more premium. Of course, M Performance parts are available as well. This is what they look like on the black car. I'm a fan of the wheels more than anything else. Do you think they help that much? It's interesting. In terms of the interior, very similar to what we found in the 340i, very high quality, very much reminding me of the 8 Series, particularly nice in this red finish. But what I really want to show you is what this car is like when you're driving it. So let's take it out right now. So first of the M-powered versions of the 4 Series is the 440i. How similar is it going to be to that 340i? And what's it going to be like compared to its rivals? So it's a similar story as you begin to drive the new 4 Series as well. It's feeling very 8 Series, and I mean that as a complete compliment. It is actually very, very comfortable to drive, even in this, which is the first M version, the M Lite 440i. It's really quite surprisingly comfortable, and we don't really liken comfort particularly to M variants of BMW product. Now that's nice because you've got the whole 8 Series vibe going on with the interior. You've got the extra space in the back that you don't have with that car, and you've also got the best sides of the 8 Series in terms of its ability to chew through miles and keep you really, really quite comfortable. But of course, that's not what the 440i is about. So we're going to go into sport mode. As you see, the screen in front changes. There's the first change. Now, when I put my foot down, you see something come up called e-boost. Now, this is that 48-volt hybrid system, which is all the rage these days, as we've seen in the 53 AMG applications as well, where we've got that extra bit of horsepower given. In this car, it's about 11 brake horsepower. Undoubtedly, there's some torque as well. And that helps with acceleration like this, particularly low speed takeoff, and it gives you instant response, instant torque, bit of extra brake horsepower. And you do feel it's a little bit more eager than the 340i in that regard, because that car doesn't benefit from this. And it's less about that extra horsepower, it's more about the immediate eagerness of the car. So that's lovely. Even like doing 80 miles an hour now, there is no lag, there is no delay. You start to pick up speed immediately. Now these M Lights are bloody fast now. Saw that with the 340i, even driving it back to back with Taycan Turbo S. I was still impressed with the speed. Off the lights in real world usage, a car like this is going to trouble most things that come up next to it. But I don't think that's a massively important metric to talk about. It's more about when you want to take an opportunity as a driver, the car has ample speed and behaves as you would expect an M car to do in terms of speed and taking opportunities. Now the disappointing side of it is the 340i sounded really quite good, whereas this has got nothing to it at all in terms of engine note. Now of course we know BMW can coax good sound out of it because of what the 340i sounded like, and of course this comes back once again, and I'm sorry to sound like a broken record, it's all about EU regulations limiting the amount of sound that cars can make. And as I've said in the past, I'm all for cutting down emissions and having emission-free driving in the future. I just cannot get my head around this hang-up of reducing sound for so-called health detriment to do with noise pollution. I think that topic deserves a dedicated video one day. But yeah, what that means is that I really can't coax any sound out of this. Gone into manual now. Whereas in the 340 you'd get some nice pops and bangs coming out of this in sport mode. In the 440i there's just nothing there. So certainly you will be looking for some kind of aftermarket solution on this. And I'm crossing absolutely everything that the M4 has something that will really differentiate it to this car in terms of exhaust note. Now in terms of steering, this sort of stuff becomes problematic, just like I found in the 340i. It's just really, really numb. You don't know what the front wheels are doing. Sometimes to me it almost feels like the car is driving itself and I'm doing pretend steering actions rather than actually driving the car myself. And for a brand that's known for being the ultimate driving machine, particularly in an M-Light, it's just so weird. I mean, the C43 has just got way better steering in that regard. That being said, the actual handling is really quite brilliant. The car feels rigid, there's not that much body roll. Despite the fact that it's larger than the previous 4, I think it's doing a better job of handling the weight of the car. It really inspires you to attack a corner harder. It's just a shame that the confidence is taken away a little bit by the numb steering feel. And it's such a shame because it lets down what's otherwise a really nice chassis and a really great engine and gearbox pairing. And one thing I really love is the gearbox and the engine. It'll swap ratios really nicely in comfort mode, and then when you want to put it into manual and you want to control it, the 8-speed is really, really quite good. And as I always say, when you pair a good gearbox with a really good engine, and this B58 inline turbo is a really good engine, then you wind up with the type of experience that makes you want to come back to a car again and again. And the engine is what really saves the M440i, as it did with the 340i. It's simply a stonking engine. There has not been a single point in my time with this car where the engine has ever lagged or the gearbox has ever behaved in a way that was detrimental to my driving style. Now, of course, as I said, the center of gravity lower in this versus the 3 Series, and the best way to kind of describe how that feels, because you do feel it, is a bit of that on-rails feeling that you get from EVs because they've got all the battery sitting at the bottom of the car. You feel a little bit of that in the 4 Series, where it's that much more attached to the tarmac below. So when I stand back and I look at the 440i, whereas the 340i was a really fun sports saloon for me, this to me is more of a high-end GT car. I feel it's more of a Grand Tourer. It's got so much refinement just in daily use. The engine is brilliant, the gearbox is brilliant, it's great to drive in comfort mode. And because of the way the interior is designed and indeed the exterior, it's got a lot of the flamboyance of kind of a higher end coupe rather than one that typically sits in this space. So something like the C43, for example, really looks completely boring on the road on the outside compared to this. Even if you don't like the grille, generally the styling on the 4 Series much more high end, and inside there's really no contest. What it doesn't tick compared to its rivals, in my opinion, is the sports coupe box. Despite how well tuned the chassis is, the steering lets it down, the lack of exhaust note are two things that really dumb down the overall emotional experience. That doesn't distract from how good of a daily car it is, but it does detract from the M side of this M440i. This is absolutely my recommendation for the best mid-level grand touring coupe that you can get. I think it's got all of those elements that make a brilliant, fast, luxury coupe that can chew up loads and loads of miles. But if you're looking for a ferocious sports coupe, I think you'll have to look elsewhere. So guys, that's the full review of the brand new M440i. Really excited to see what the next level of M can do in the M4. If you've enjoyed this episode, please do like, subscribe, hit the bell icon, and I'll see you again next time.